Daniel Carter checked the pressure readings on Deck 7 for the third time that hour. The numbers were normal, just like they had been all week. But checking gave him something to do, and on a ship traveling through empty space, busy hands kept a quiet mind. The Horizon's Edge was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel, old but reliable, now carrying supplies and a small crew on humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the Sindari Empire. 37 days into the journey, and Daniel had not seen anything more exciting than a minor coolant leak in the engine room. He preferred it that way. Excitement meant problems. Problems meant danger. And Daniel had seen enough danger to last several lifetimes. He was walking toward the mess hall when the ship shook violently. The lights flickered. Red warning signals flashed across every screen on the corridor walls. All hands to battle stations. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers. We are under attack. This is not a drill. Daniel ran toward the nearest observation window. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 3 ships surrounded the Horizon's Edge. They were Sindari in design, but they carried no official markings. Their weapons were already firing. Explosions tore through the hull of the human vessel, but the attackers were not only targeting his ship. A Sindari transport floated nearby, and it was burning too. Whoever these attackers were, they wanted both ships destroyed. Another explosion rocked the corridor. Daniel lost his footing and slammed into the wall. Smoke filled the air. The emergency system screamed warnings about hull breaches on multiple decks. He knew the ship was dying. Everyone aboard knew it. Daniel did not panic. He had survived worse. He ran toward the escape pods on Deck 4, climbing through damaged sections and crawling past fires that blocked the main passages. By the time he reached the pod bay, his lungs burned from the smoke. Most of the pods were already gone. Only 2 remained. He sprinted toward the nearest one and pulled the hatch open. A body crashed into him from behind. Daniel hit the floor hard. Someone scrambled over him, desperate and injured. He caught a glimpse of silver skin and violet eyes before the figure collapsed inside the escape pod. An alien. A Sindari. The ship groaned. Metal twisted somewhere deep in the structure. They had seconds, maybe less. Daniel did not think. He threw himself into the pod and slammed the launch button. The hatch sealed. The pod shot away from the dying ship, just as the Horizon's Edge broke apart in a massive explosion through the small window. Daniel watched the debris scatter across space. 30 crew members. All gone. He sat in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to look at his unexpected companion. The Sindari lay unconscious on the pod's narrow floor. She was female. That much was clear from her features. Her silver skin had a soft glow, now dimmed by injury. Dark blood seeped from a wound on her side. Her hair, long and strange, shifted between colors even as she lay still. Moving from deep blue to pale purple. She was beautiful in a way that felt almost unreal. But she was also dying. Daniel pushed his grief aside. There would be time for that later. Right now, someone needed his help. He found the emergency medical kit and went to work. The wound was deep but clean. He applied pressure, used the synthetic skin patches from the kit, and injected her with a general antibiotic that he hoped would work on Sindari biology. The pod's navigation system beeped. They were caught in the gravity well of a nearby moon. Atmospheric entry was unavoidable. Daniel strapped himself in and secured the alien woman as best he could. The pod shook violently as it hit the atmosphere. Fire surrounded the small window. The heat inside rose until sweat dripped down his face. Then they hit the ground. The impact knocked him unconscious. When Daniel opened his eyes, green light filtered through cracks in the pod's hull. He smelled plants and dirt, and something sweet he could not identify. They had landed in some kind of jungle. The alien woman was awake. She stood over him with a piece of broken metal in her hand. holding it like a weapon. Her violet eyes were filled with fear and anger. "Do not move, human," she said. Her voice was cold. "You will tell me what your kind has done." Daniel raised his hands slowly. "I did not do anything. Someone attacked both our ships. I saved your life." Lies. She pressed the metal closer to his throat. "This was a human trap. You wanted to start a war. If I wanted you dead, why would I waste medical supplies keeping you alive?" She hesitated. The metal wavered. Daniel spoke calmly. "My name is Daniel Carter. I was an engineer on the horizon's edge. My ship is gone. My crew is dead. I am just as much a victim as you are." The alien woman studied him for a long moment. Her expression did not soften, but she lowered the weapon slightly. "I am Valaria," she said finally. "Princess of the Sindari Empire." Daniel blinked. Of all the people to get stranded with, he had found royalty. "Well, Princess," he said, "our distress beacon is damaged. We have limited supplies. And we are stuck on a moon that does not appear on any of my charts. So unless you want to spend the rest of your life in this jungle, I suggest we start working together." Valaria looked at him with distrust still burning in her eyes. But she lowered the metal completely. "If you betray me, human, I will kill you." "Fair enough," Daniel said. He stood up slowly, his body aching from the crash. "Now let us see what we are dealing with." He stepped out of the broken pod and into a world of towering trees. Strange sounds and air that tasted like copper. Somewhere in the sky above. The ones who attacked them were still out there, and Daniel had a feeling this was only the beginning. The first 3 days on the jungle moon nearly killed them both. Daniel learned quickly that this world did not want them alive. The plants were not just plants. Some of them moved. Some of them had teeth. On the second morning, a vine wrapped around his leg and tried to drag him into a pit filled with digestive acid. Valaria cut him free with the metal shard she still carried. She did not thank him for saving her life. He did not thank her for saving his. They simply kept moving. The air was breathable but heavy. Pockets of toxic gas drifted through certain areas, invisible until your eyes started burning and your lungs began to close. Daniel built simple filters from cloth and charcoal he made from burned wood. Valaria watched him work with obvious curiosity, but said nothing. They argued constantly. "You walk too slowly," Valaria said on the third day. "Sindari soldiers could cover twice this distance." "Sindari soldiers probably have better food than emergency ration bars and contaminated water," Daniel replied. "If you want to run ahead, go ahead. I will find your body when something eats you." She glared at him but stayed close. Daniel found water on the fourth day. A small stream ran through a clearing, and his testing kit confirmed it was safe after boiling. He set up a simple camp near the water source, building a shelter from fallen branches and large leaves. "This is primitive," Valaria said, looking at the structure. "This is survival," Daniel answered. "You are welcome to sleep outside with the things that scream in the dark." She slept in the shelter. On the fifth night, a storm hit. Rain fell so hard it sounded like rocks hitting the ground. Lightning turned the sky white. The wind tore at their shelter and nearly ripped it apart. Daniel held the structure, together with his body while Valaria braced the other side. They worked without speaking, both understanding that failure meant death. When the storm finally passed, they sat in the darkness, wet and exhausted. "You are stronger than I expected," Valaria said quietly. "For a human. And you complain less than I expected," Daniel replied. For a princess, she almost smiled. Almost. "Why were you on that transport?" Daniel asked. "A princess traveling through contested space seems like a bad idea." Valaria was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was flat. I was being sent to marry Lord Carveth of the Eastern faction. A political arrangement. My father believed it would secure an alliance and prevent civil war. Did you want to marry him? Want? She laughed bitterly. Want has nothing to do with royal duty. Carveth is cruel. He has 3 wives already. 2 of them died under mysterious circumstances. I was to be the 4th. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. You were being sent to your death. I was being sent to serve my empire. Her voice cracked slightly. I am the youngest daughter, the least important. My value is in what alliances my body can secure, nothing more. Daniel did not know what to say. On Earth, arranged marriages still existed in some cultures, but nothing like this. Nothing where a woman was traded like property to a man who might kill her. I am sorry, he said finally. Valaria looked at him strangely. Why? You did not do this to me. Because no one should be treated like that. Not you. Not anyone. She turned away, but not before Daniel saw something change in her eyes. The anger was still there, but beneath it, something else. Something like surprise. What about you? She asked after a while. Why did you volunteer for a mission so far from your home? Daniel stared at the dying embers of their fire. My wife and daughter died 3 years ago. Shuttle accident on the way to visit her parents. I was supposed to be with them, but I stayed behind to finish a project at work. You blame yourself. Every day. Valaria said nothing, but she moved slightly closer to him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Grief is universal, it seems, she said softly. Even across species. They sat in silence until morning. The next day. Everything changed. Daniel spotted something metallic reflecting sunlight through the trees. He approached carefully, expecting another piece of their own wreckage. Instead, he found something much worse. A ship. Not human. Not standard Sindari either. It was smaller, built for speed and stealth. And it had crashed hard, leaving a long scar through the jungle. This is an assassin's vessel, Valaria whispered. Her face went pale. Lack operations. No markings. No official records. Daniel examined the wreckage. The ship had been damaged before it crashed, likely caught in the same battle that destroyed the Horizon's Edge and the Sindari transport. Inside, they found bodies. Sindari soldiers in unmarked armor. They also found datapads and communication logs. Valaria read through them while Daniel kept watch. With each passing minute, her expression grew darker. This was not a random attack, she said finally. Her voice shook with fury. This was planned. Ordered by nobles within my own empire. They wanted me dead. They wanted to blame humans. They wanted war. Daniel felt the pieces click together. Kill the princess. Destroy the human ship. Let the 2 species tear each other apart while the conspirators seize power. Your own people did this, he said. Not my people. Valaria's eyes burned with cold fire. Traitors. And they are still out there. A sound echoed through the jungle. Footsteps. Many of them. Daniel grabbed Valaria's arm. Some of them survived the crash. She nodded grimly. And they are coming to finish what they started. They ran into the jungle as shadows moved through the trees behind them. The hunt had begun. Daniel and Valaria ran through the jungle for hours. The assassins were skilled trackers, but Daniel had spent years hiking through wilderness on Earth and knew how to hide a trail. He led them through streams to mask their scent, doubled back through dense vegetation, and avoided open ground where they could be spotted by nightfall. They had put enough distance between themselves and their pursuers to risk a short rest. How many did you count? Daniel asked, keeping his voice low. At least 6, Valaria replied. Maybe more. They are trained killers. We cannot fight them directly. Daniel knew she was right. He was an engineer, not a soldier. She was a princess, not a warrior. Their only advantages were the jungle itself and their knowledge of the terrain near their camp. "We need weapons," he said. "Real weapons." Valeria held up one of the data pads she had taken from the crashed ship. According to their supply manifest, they had a weapons cache. Some of it should have survived the crash. Daniel smiled grimly. "Then we go shopping." They returned to the wreckage under cover of darkness. The assassins had set up a camp nearby, but most of them were out searching the jungle. Only 2 guards remained. Daniel watched them from the shadows. His heart pounded in his chest. He had never killed anyone. He had hoped he never would. But these men were hunting Valeria. They would not stop until she was dead. He picked up a heavy rock and moved silently through the undergrowth. The first guard died without a sound. Daniel hit him from behind before the Sindari even knew he was there. The second guard turned at the noise, but Valeria was already moving. She drove her metal shard into his throat before he could raise his weapon. They stood over the bodies. Breathing hard. "You fight well for a princess," Daniel said. "You kill well for an engineer," she replied. They found the weapons cache inside the ship. Energy pistols, a rifle, and several grenades. Daniel took what he could carry and handed the rest to Valeria. "Do you know how to use these?" He asked Dot. She gave him a look that needed no translation. Of course she did. They were halfway back to the jungle when the remaining assassins found them. Energy blasts tore through the darkness. Daniel grabbed Valeria and pulled her behind a fallen tree. Shots burned the air around them, leaving the smell of scorched wood and ozone. "There are too many," Valeria said. "We cannot win this fight." Daniel counted the muzzle flashes. 4 shooters, maybe 5. She was right. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they were not out of options. "When I move, you run toward the river," Daniel said. "Do not stop. Do not look back." Valeria grabbed his arm. "What are you going to do? Something stupid?" Before she could argue, Daniel stood up and fired his pistol into the darkness. He ran in the opposite direction from Valeria, shooting and shouting, making himself the biggest target possible. The assassins took the bait. They chased him, firing as they ran. Daniel moved through the jungle like a man possessed. Branches cut his face. Roots tried to trip him. Energy blasts burned past his head so close he felt the heat. But he kept running, kept firing, kept drawing them away from Vel area. He reached a cliff overlooking a deep ravine. Nowhere left to go. The assassins emerged from the trees, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, a tall Sindari with cold eyes and a cruel smile. "Impressive, human," he said. "You led us on quite a chase. But it ends here." Daniel stood at the edge of the cliff, pistol empty, body exhausted. He had no more tricks, no more options, but he had bought Valeria time. That was enough. "Before you kill me," Daniel said, "I want you to know something." The leader raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "Humans do not surrender." Daniel pulled the grenade from his belt and threw it at their feet. The explosion sent bodies flying. Daniel jumped backward, over the cliff, falling into darkness. He hit water, cold and deep. The current grabbed him and pulled him under. He fought to the surface, gasping for air, and let the river carry him away from the chaos above. When he finally dragged himself onto the shore. He was alone, but not for long. Valeria emerged from the trees, running toward him. Her eyes were wide with something he had never seen in them before. Fear. Not for herself. For him. "You fool," she said, dropping to her knees beside him. "You absolute fool. You could have died, but I did not." She was shaking. Her hands moved over his body, checking for wounds. He was cut and bruised and burned in several places, but nothing was fatal. "Why did you do that?" she demanded, Why risk your life for me? I treated you horribly. I accused you of terrible things. Why would you sacrifice yourself for someone like me?" Daniel looked up at her face, silver and beautiful in the moonlight. "Because protecting people is what humans do," he said simply. "It does not require a reason." Valeria stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he somehow knew was deeply intimate among her people. "I was wrong about humans," she whispered. "I was wrong about everything." Daniel reached up and touched her face. Her skin was warm, despite its metallic sheen. "Let us survive this first," he said. "Then you can tell me how wrong you were." She laughed softly. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Daniel counted 12 soldiers moving through the jungle toward their position. Professional killers, heavily armed, with one mission: ensure Princess Valeria never left this moon alive. They had 2 pistols, 1 rifle, 3 grenades, and the jungle itself. It would have to be enough. "We cannot beat them in a straight fight," Daniel said, drawing a map in the dirt. "But we do not need to beat them. We just need to survive until rescue arrives." Valeria studied the map, the ravine to the east. "We could use the narrow passage as a choke point." "Too obvious. They will expect that." Daniel pointed to another area, but the toxic gas pockets to the north. "They do not know about those." A slow smile spread across Valeria's face. "You want to lead them into a trap. Several traps." They worked through the night preparing the battlefield. Daniel rigged tripwires connected to grenades. Valeria identified the gas pockets and marked safe paths around them. They created false trails, hidden positions, and fallback points. When dawn broke, they were ready. The assassins came at first light. Daniel fired the opening shot from a concealed position, dropping the lead soldier before anyone knew what was happening. Then he moved, running through the jungle while energy blasts burned the air behind him. The assassins gave chase, exactly as planned. The first group hit the tripwire. The explosion killed 2 and wounded 3 more. The survivors scattered, confused and angry. Valeria opened fire from a different position, cutting down another soldier before disappearing into the undergrowth. The assassins returned fire at empty trees. "Spread out," their commander shouted. "Find them! Kill them both!" They spread out. They found the gas pockets. Daniel heard the screaming as the toxic air hit their lungs. 3 more down. The survivors pulled back, regrouping near a clearing. Only 6 left now. But 6 was still too many. The commander was smart. He stopped chasing and set up a defensive position, forcing Daniel and Valeria to come to them. Time was on the assassin side. They could call for reinforcements. They could wait for the rescue ships and shoot them down. Daniel had to end this now. "I am going in," he told Valeria through the small communicator they had salvaged. "That is suicide. Let me circle around and create a distraction." "No, you have the evidence. The data pads proving the conspiracy. If I fall, you run. You get to the rescue ships. You expose the traitors." "Daniel, I will not leave you." "Valeria," his voice was soft but firm. "I lost everything once. My wife, my daughter, my reason to live. I spent 3 years floating through space, waiting to die. Then I met you. And for the first time since the accident, I found something worth fighting for." She was silent on the other end of the communicator. "I'm not doing this because I want to die," Daniel continued. "I am doing this because I finally want to live. And the only way I can do that is to make sure you survive." "You stupid, stubborn, beautiful human," her voice cracked. "You better not die. I will do my best." Daniel emerged from the jungle and walked toward the assassin's position. No cover, no tricks, just a single human facing 6 trained killers. The commander laughed. "Have you come to surrender?" "No," Daniel said. I have come to give you one chance. Leave now. Tell your masters that Princess Valaria is under my protection, and that any Sindari who threatens her will answer to humanity." The soldiers laughed, but their commander did not. He was studying Daniel with a mixture of confusion and unease. "You are already dead, human. You must know that." Daniel smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Maybe, but I promise you this. Before I fall, I will take every single one of you with me. Your empire tells stories about human madness, about our refusal to surrender, about our willingness to die for strangers. He raised his weapon. Those stories are true. The commander hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, Valaria opened fire from behind them. 2 soldiers dropped before the others knew what was happening. Daniel charged forward, firing as he ran. A shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He kept moving. Another shot grazed his leg. He did not stop. The assassins had never seen anything like it. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, easy to kill. This one kept coming, bleeding from multiple wounds, eyes burning with a fury that seemed inhuman. Daniel reached the first soldier and fought hand to hand. He was slower, weaker, less trained, but he was also completely unafraid. He took hits that should have dropped him and kept fighting. Valaria was beside him now, moving like silver lightning. Together they cut through the remaining soldiers until only the commander remained. The commander raised his weapon at Valaria. Daniel stepped between them. The shot hit him in the chest. Time seemed to slow. Daniel looked down at the wound, then back up at the commander. He should have fallen. He should have died. Instead, he grabbed the commander's arm, pulled him close, and drove his knife into the Sindari's heart. They fell together. Valaria screamed Daniel's name. She rushed to his side, pressing her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please, you cannot leave me now." Daniel's vision was fading, but he could still see her face, silver and beautiful, wet with tears. "I told you," he whispered. "Humans do not surrender." Then everything went black. He woke up in a medical bay. The lights were too bright. Everything hurt. But he was alive. Valaria sat beside his bed, holding his hand. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was smiling. "You survived," she said. "The rescue ships arrived just in time. Human and Sindari both, responding to your beacon." Daniel tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Valaria held water to his lips. "The conspiracy is exposed," she continued. "The traitors have been arrested. My father knows everything. The peace treaty between our peoples is not only saved, but stronger than ever." "And you?" Daniel managed. Valaria's smile grew wider. "I told my father that I will not marry Lord Carveth. I told him I'd choose my own path now." "What did he say?" "He was angry at first. Then I told him about you, about everything you did." The emperor of the Sindari Empire was silent for a long time. She squeezed his hand. Then he said that any man brave enough to face death for his daughter deserves her. Daniel felt tears in his own eyes. "Valaria." She leaned down and kissed him gently. "Our peoples have much to learn from each other," she whispered, "and we have the rest of our lives to teach them." Weeks later, Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the Sindari capital. The city stretched to the horizon, towers of crystal and light that made human architecture look primitive. Valaria stood beside him, her hand in his. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. Daniel thought about it. He thought about the blue oceans and green forests. He thought about his wife and daughter. He thought about the life he had lost. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But home is not a place. Home is a person. And my home is wherever you are." Valaria leaned her head against his shoulder. Above them, human and Sindari ships flew together through the alien sky, symbols of a new alliance built on the most human thing of all: love. The story of the human engineer and the alien princess spread across the galaxy. It became legend. It became proof that the universe, vast and cold as it was, could never be too large for hearts brave enough to reach across it. And somewhere, on a jungle moon, the wreckage of an escape pod lay forgotten, half buried in vines and flowers. The place where everything began. The days that followed were different. Daniel and Valaria returned to their camp by the stream, but something between them had changed. The distrust was gone. The arguments stopped. They moved around each other with an ease that surprised them both, anticipating needs before they were spoken. Daniel focused on repairing their distress beacon. The crash had damaged the primary transmitter, but he believed he could fix it using parts salvaged from the assassin's ship. It would take time, careful work, and a lot of luck. Valaria helped where she could. She was not an engineer, but she was intelligent and learned quickly. She held tools when he needed them, tested connections when he asked, and kept watch while he worked. In the quiet hours between work, they talked. "Tell me about Earth," Valaria said one evening. They sat by the fire, eating the last of their ration bars. "I have only heard stories. Most of them were not kind." Daniel smiled sadly. "Earth is beautiful. Blue oceans, green forests, mountains that touch the clouds. But it is also harsh. We have storms that destroy cities, earthquakes that swallow towns, predators that hunt without mercy. Your world shaped you," Valaria said. "Made you strong. Made us stubborn," Daniel corrected. "Humans survived because we refused to give up, even when everything said we should." Valaria was quiet for a moment. "Among my people, humans are called the mad ones. They say you fight wars over ideas, that you will die for strangers, that you love with a fierceness that borders on insanity. Is that a bad thing?" She looked at him with those violet eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. "I am beginning to think it is wonderful." The next morning, Valaria asked about human relationships. "Your people choose their own partners," she said. It was not a question. No arrangements. No political considerations. Some cultures still have those things, Daniel admitted. But for most humans, yes. We choose who we love. How do you know? When you love someone? Daniel thought about his wife. About the way she smiled when she woke up next to him. About the sound of her laugh. About the hole in his chest that had never healed. "You know because they become part of you," he said slowly. "Because the thought of losing them is worse than the thought of losing yourself. Because you would do anything, face anything, just to see them safe and happy." Valaria absorbed his words in silence. That night, she slept closer to him than before. Not touching, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. 3 more days passed. The beacon was almost ready. Daniel was making the final adjustments when Valaria spoke. "If this works," she said, "they will come for us. My people, your people. And I will be expected to return to my duties. To your marriage. Yes." Daniel's hands stopped moving. He did not look at her. "Then we should hope it works," he said carefully. Valaria stood and walked around to face him. Her expression was fierce and vulnerable at the same time. "I do not want to go back," she said. "I do not want to marry a monster and spend the rest of my life as a political tool. I would rather stay here, on this dangerous moon, eating terrible food and fighting for survival every day. Valaria, I would rather stay here with you." Daniel finally met her eyes. He saw the truth there, raw and exposed. She was not simply grateful. She was not confused. She knew exactly what she was saying. "I am a human," he said quietly. "An engineer from a primitive species. You are a princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Your people would never accept this. I do not care about my people's acceptance. I care about my own heart." She stepped closer. For the first time in my life, I know what I want. And I want you, Daniel Carter." He should have said no. He should have been practical, sensible, realistic. Their situation was impossible. Their future was uncertain. Everything about this was insane, but humans were the mad ones. After all, he kissed her. She tasted like starlight and honey, strange and perfect. Her arms wrapped around him, and for a moment, nothing else existed. Not the jungle, not the assassins, not the vast emptiness of space that separated their worlds. Just them. Up. Roar shattered the moment. They broke apart and grabbed their weapons. Something was coming through the trees. Something big. The creature that burst into the clearing was unlike anything Daniel had seen. 6 legs, armored hide, and a mouthful of teeth designed for one purpose. They fought together, moving as one. Daniel fired at the creature's legs while Valaria aimed for its eyes. They circled it, drew its attention, created openings for each other. When it lunged at Valaria, Daniel threw himself in its path. When it turned on Daniel, Valaria drove a blade into its neck. The creature fell. They stood over its body, breathing hard, covered in blood that was not their own. Valaria looked at Daniel with wild eyes. "You keep saving me. You keep saving me back." She laughed and kissed him again, fierce and desperate. They returned to the beacon. Daniel made the final connection and activated the transmitter. A signal pulsed down into space, calling for rescue. "It is done," he said. "Help will come." Valaria nodded, but her eyes were on the sky, and her expression was worried. "Someone else will come first," she said. Daniel followed her gaze. A ship was descending through the clouds. It bore no markings, but its design was familiar. Another assassin vessel. The conspirators had been monitoring for signals. They knew exactly where to find their target. "How long until our rescue arrives?" Valaria asked. Daniel checked the beacon's calculations. "Hours, maybe longer." The ship landed in the distance. They could hear soldiers deploying, weapons charging. Valaria took Daniel's hand. "Then we fight, together?" She smiled, beautiful and deadly. "Together."